This is the DLR Cast, the essential podcast for fans of Diamond David Lee Roth. All right, welcome back to another episode of the DLR Cast. I'm Steve, of course, with my good friend, as always, Darren Paltrowitz. What's happening?
Steve, great to connect, and thanks to everyone for listening.
Yeah, for sure. So you are, full disclosure, you are in the East Coast, and as this is the DLR Cast, yours truly is actually broadcasting live, ostensibly, from Dave's original home state and birthplace, about 300 miles away from where he was first born, in Indiana. So there you go. There's my one connection as I'm broadcasting live from Indiana here.
Whereabouts in Indiana? I didn't know that part.
Not too far from Fort Wayne. So
okay.
And
if Motley Crue were touring, they would probably come to where you are in the third leg of the tour.
Quite possibly. It's very rural here. It's very nice. And to paraphrase a Jimmy Buffett lyric, there's those who would say there's a woman to blame. So we'll just leave it at that. So
congratulations and sorry.
No blame or no apologies necessary. But as this is the DLR Cast, come on, I'm not feeling any kismet per se, because I am about 300 miles away from Bloomington, Indiana. But, for those who think Dave is strictly an East Coast guy, well, he was born in Indiana. Lived for a while in Massachusetts, and then did most of the formative years, high school on, of course, and meeting the Van Halen brothers in high school at, in Pasadena, California. So,
and the more Dave speaks nowadays, the more you actually hear that Indiana middle American kind of accent. No judgment on that end. It's just he's never had a New York accent or a Boston accent.
He never has either. And I guess you can kind of hear that latent country voice still bubbling up later in life, I think, right?
For sure.
So
I kicked off there. What were you about to say, Ken?
I was going to say a good segue as we talk about Pasadena here is, well, the latest rumor that's churning out of the rumor mill from, the unfortunate passing of the great and legendary Eddie Van Halen. And that is the ridiculous and asinine rumor that Wolfgang Van Halen had to shut down very quickly. And that is that there was some stupid rumor that got enough traction for him to speak about it, in that there was some reunion tour concert that folks were talking about starring Michael, Sammy, Alex, and on lead guitar, Wolfgang Van Halen. I mean, this is just absurdity. And on the one hand, being a Dave fan, it's like, wait, why isn't this rumor about Dave? But on the other hand, the whole idea of it is just ridiculous on its face.
Yeah, it reminds me of when maybe 5 years ago or so, when they were spreading rumors of a Pantera reunion with Zakk Wylde replacing Dimebag Darrell on the guitar part. And it doesn't seem like that was something that anybody ever talked about, just something maybe a Blabbermouth reader said instead. And
yes.
Now, like, it's on Blabbermouth? Well, maybe we should write about it in Kerrang. Oh, it's on Blabbermouth and Kerrang? Well, it's going to be on Brave Words. And before you know it, it's a rumor that people have to shut down.
Exactly. I'm going to completely mess up the analogy, but you will probably get it because you are much more smarter at this than I am. What's the thing? A lie it takes forever the truth to go around the world, but a lie takes half the time. Do you know what I'm saying here? It's like basically a lie will get more traction ever than the truth will, because sometimes they're just so ridiculous, but people will traffic in and go, hey, this is a possibility.
Don't get me wrong. I would love to see that tour. I think that Wolfgang, did you ever watch the video of Wolfgang playing Eruption?
Oh, yeah, Lord, yes. Yeah. In fact, his forthcoming solo record, which apparently is done as in the can, he plays every instrument on guitar. I've seen him play Eruption on guitar and seen him play Eruption on bass guitar as well. So no doubt the kid is, ridiculously talented.
Yeah, so it's a rumor. We'd love to see it. I don't think it's out of the question to say one day in the future that we will see something like that. But of course, when somebody is dealing with the passing of their parent, I don't think that the first thought in their head is, how can I cash in on this?
Oh, exactly. And that's the sad thing, was that he had to actually go on all the social media saying, this is complete BS and you're hurting me and my family. Stop it. And it's ridiculous. Now, having said all that, I did see something online and I didn't take the bait completely to click because I've been super busy, as I know you have been, but I saw something that the city of Pasadena maybe working on some sort of tribute or some sort of thing, whatever. So, and of course, Sammy did his thing with the Circle and on a barge in Mexico or whatever it was at his resort down there, part of his birthday bash. So, I mean, no doubt these things are going to. I mean, in the age of COVID and everything else, is there going to be a gigantic, outpouring, gigantic, concert happening at, the LA Forum or whatever it is, or Staples Center? I doubt that's going to happen. But all that stuff just kind of smacks me as just kind of just, complete taking advantage, sort of overkill. And I don't know, do you want 20 different guitar players interpreting the guy who's virtually uninterpretable? You know what I mean?
Some Van Halen is, of course, better than no Van Halen. That's how I have to look at the whole thing. But give it time. And I say give it time because nobody knows what live entertainment is going to look like. Nobody knows, are our favorite artists going to tour anytime soon, let alone if at all. So whoever thinks that the first thing on the mind of all these people is there's going to be a tour, not exactly. Now, one-offs and tributes and live streams, we're seeing some interesting ones. And of course, back to what you were saying, we are seeing some very interesting Eddie stories still coming out. There was the one a couple days ago about Ozzy Osbourne claiming that he almost joined Van Halen. Did you see that one?
No, not at all. But that's the most ridiculous thing I think I've ever heard. Come on.
We are seeing some great things. I think I was talking about with you on the last episode, the Chris Holmes from Wasp thing. That was really sharing some behind the scenes early Eddie stuff that we've never heard before. Whether or not it's all true is another story, but it's talking about where the finger tapping really came from, dispelling some stuff. And Chris Holmes also said the often said thing about Eddie playing with his back turned to the audience is not true.
Really? Okay. Wow. That's interesting. So Eddie himself has said that, hey, listen, I didn't invent this, but I was a guy, he was clearly the guy that took it way, way places that heretofore nobody ever had. I mean, I was watching some Jeff Beck stuff recently and I saw him. It wasn't an old video, but I'm sure he was doing this before then, but just little bits and pieces and solos where he was doing the hammer-ons and the pull-offs, with the right hand and stuff. But I mean, and I know there was some, I think Eddie referenced, I forgot the guy who it was it a jazz guitarist, somebody way back in the day that did it once or twice, but clearly he was a guy who just brought it to a completely ridiculous level and did things with it he had ever seen before.
He took Jeff Beck, you mentioned, I never heard that before. I've always heard that it was a Led Zeppelin show at the Forum where he saw Jimmy Page do something similar and he copied it. Whatever it is, clearly the Yardbirds, between them two and Clapton supposedly being the favorite guitarist ever of Eddie Van Halen, I guess the Yardbirds might have been his favorite band.
Yeah, the weird thing is, and not to get too far down that rabbit hole, but I've been reading a Jeff Beck biography recently, but I mean, for years, I never heard the Clapton influence on Eddie's playing. I definitely always heard the Jeff Beck influence because Jeff has done some crazy stuff through the years with harmonics and bizarre tapping and these insane string bends and all these different things, I mean, and so a lot of crazy whammy bar stuff. So, I mean, to my ears, I'd love to someday ask a guitar player, other guitar players, if we get on again sometime, where it's like, okay, did you ever hear this influence on Clapton? But the interesting too, from there on, and I was watching recently that wonderful Smithsonian. It was part of the Smithsonian where it was like an hour interview. And if you have not seen this interview and you're a fan of Van Halen, Eddie and Dave, you've got to see this interview. But he had mentioned in that interview that. And now I just completely lost my train of thought, but he was talking about his influences and different things like that. And one thing was that after Clapton, he really listened to no new music. The joke was, what was the last album he got? Peter Gabriel's So.
Yeah, exactly. 586, something like that.
Yeah, that he didn't listen to any music, just did not listen. I mean, I can't believe, driving around his Lamborghini, he didn't throw in a CD back then or even listen to K-Rock or something, for goodness sakes, but go figure.
Did you see any of the Billy Joel related Eddie Van Halen stuff that came out in the last week or two?
No, my goodness, where the hell have I been?
I think you've been clickbaited by different things than I've been. I think that's where you've been. Well, there was two Billy Joel things. I didn't watch this first one, that apparently there was a West Side Story tribute at the Hollywood Bowl early 90s, an all-star kind of thing. And I guess Billy Joel sang and Eddie Van Halen did a song with him.
Really?
Didn't look at the video yet, but somebody unearthed it, whoever the curator of the whole thing was. And related to that, somebody said that Eddie Van Halen was asked to produce Stormfront album by Billy Joel, and he turned it down and referred them to Mick Jones from Foreigner.
I have heard that. And of course, Mick Jones later produced 5150. The first album was Sammy, right? So was in the producer's chair?
5150 was 86. Am I correct?
Yeah.
And
Stormfront was
89. So I'm guessing.
Oh, that's right. You're right. Okay, there you go. Yes, never mind. I got my dates mixed up. You're correct.
Mine was 1991. That was Nirvana, Van Halen.
That's right. Thank you.
Sorry about that. I'm actually interviewing Butch Vig next week, it looks like. So I'm curious to see if he knows about the Kurt Cobain story about him brushing off Eddie Van Halen. So we'll see how much guts I have to ask Butch Vig about Van Halen.
That's interesting. That reminds me too that didn't Kurt Cobain once say that Nirvana was just Cheap Trick with louder guitars?
Wow.
Yeah. That was a quote. And of course, Dave Grohl is a massive Rick Nielsen and Cheap Trick fan as well. So there you go. Who knows?
Dave Grohl likes all the bands that we do. That 46th birthday concert that he did.
Oh,
you ever see that?
Yeah, with Dave doing Panama and Paul Stanley coming out there too. And right? I mean,
yeah. Dave Grohl has the same taste that we do.
Oh, absolutely. Well, we're not that, I'm older than you are, but I mean, we're all kind of in that same sort of still buying music and physical means and being influenced by stuff we were seeing on TV as well as radio age bracket.
Yeah, where I'm going with that though is when Nirvana came out, and also the first Foo Fighters record or two, everything was about punk and hardcore roots. Like, oh yeah, Mike Watt was the most influential person in our lives. And you're going, really? Okay. Mike Watt's fantastic. But then you see Dave Grohl at age 46, 47 throwing a birthday party for himself. And
who's on it?
And David Lee Roth.
Exactly. You didn't see Richard Lloyd from Television there or some other erstwhile older punk rocker. I'm not going to step on.
Not coming out for that one.
Right. I'm not going to step on Dave's bona fides though, because I mean I know from reading a lot about him in Washington. He grew up in Washington D.C. The guy was a massive Bad Brains fan. He was a true punk rock guy at heart. But what did he first have on his turntable as a kid? You saw that on his birthday concert. So. Yeah,
and so you look at those special guests that came out. And then when you see Chris Shiflett, the lead guitarist, who before he was in the Foo Fighters, he was in No Use for a Name, which is a punk pop band, and he could play all the Eddie riffs. So it really
That's right, yeah.
Halen was everybody's first favorite band. I heard the singer of Alkaline Trio, who's now in Blink-182, his first album was 1984. Less Than Jake, we had the guitarist Chris on an episode or two ago. He loves Van Halen. So, one of the bad things, and I'm way tirading here, but one of the bad things about the loss of Eddie Van Halen is kind of like the loss of Johnny Carson. Like, that was one of the few people that everybody liked.
You got to bring up a good point, my friend. Transcended everything, right?
I'm getting off the soapbox now, Steve.
No, that's okay. That's okay. It's an easy place to end up for me and you, very quickly. So, all right. Well, you got a great interview with somebody whose music that I have really come to love. This guy is super talented.
Tyler Bryant from Tyler Bryant and the Shakedown. This one, I think we taped it 1 or 2 days after Eddie's passing. He was wearing a Van Halen shirt. He had a Van Halen related guitar close by. Trying to think. I mean, it was only 3-4 weeks ago, yet it feels like a long time ago that we lost Eddie.
It does, doesn't it? So, well, it's a great interview. Kudos for nabbing him. And I think musically that guy, I absolutely love this guy's music. I mean, it's just, he definitely hit a nerve with me as far as in the rock vein there. I really dig what the guy's doing. The music's got some attitude. It's got some swagger. He's got a cool voice. And he seems like a really cool guy too.
Really nice guy. And he's one of those guys that's bridging the old school and the new school. Because not only do we talk about Van Halen, but he's been on the road as a Guns N' Roses opener. And is it Tom Hamilton or Brad Whitford's son that's in the Shakedown?
Oh,
I think it's Tom Hamilton's son.
You're right. Yeah.
Hopefully he doesn't get mad that that I didn't know that outright. But guy loves Van Halen. He's been on tour with Guns N' Roses. He's got an offspring of Aerosmith in his band. You know, he's keeping the flame alive. He's keeping rock going, and not a lot of people can say that about.
Well, it definitely sounds like it. So here it is. Here's the interview with Tyler Bryant of Tyler Bryant and The Shakedown. Darren, great job. Thanks for nabbing it. And everyone, thanks for listening and downloading the DLR cast.
Thanks all.
Right on time there. How's your day going so far?
You know, just getting kind of moving. So I'm good, man. I put on my Van Halen shirt today.
I mean, full disclosure, of course, we had this book before Eddie's surprising, unexpected passing, to say the very least. Was Van Halen one of the first bands that you got into?
Yeah, man. You know, like it's interesting because I'm a straight up blues nut. Like like 80s rock was, you can't really call Van Halen 80s rock, but like whenever I first got into guitar, I was not like, Van Halen was not something I would have thought about. And I had a friend named Hunter that I went to elementary school with, and his dad had an electric Les Paul and Van Halen's first album. So Ain't Talking About Love, like that was the first song I heard from Van Halen. And this is how unaware I was. Is I had my first electric guitar was a copy of Frankenstein. It was like a little cheap copy of Frankenstein.
Really?
I posted a picture of it on my Instagram, and I just thought it was a guitar that had cool stripes on it. And so I think my parents did as well, you know? And then once I started, like, as I started getting older, I realized, oh wait, this is because of Eddie, you know? And yeah, he's a huge influence on me. You know, this guitar actually has his signature pickup in it. And yeah, I think he's just, you know, his contributions to music and to kids like me are, you know, it's just, there's not words that can explain it, you know?
Yeah. Pressure is an example of an artist who's still flying the rock flag really, really high. So congratulations on having another great record, which, you know, a question or two about that before we talk some Van Halen stuff. Is it true that the title track was written before COVID, coincidentally?
Yeah, it actually was. You know, I mean, pressure is something I feel like everybody feels all the time, you know, whether it's intense or not, but, you know, it's just something that people feel. And I think we spend so much time on the road, and as, you know, as things start to pile up, you start to feel overwhelmed occasionally. And I kind of wrote that song with Caleb, the drummer in the Shakedown, at a moment where I was just feeling overwhelmed by everything. And, you know, music is the outlet for that. And so we kind of used it to try and make something that felt like a negative thing into a positive thing. And as 2020 sort of unraveled, that song sort of reemerged, and we thought, hey, people are feeling pressure like they've never felt it before.
To say the least, I can't top that. And album is still slated to come out in a week and change. Of course, there's no immediate touring cycle that we know of or anything like that. So do you know anything that's coming up for the band besides putting out this great album?
So it's I'm glad you asked, because I just posted the ticket link for our album release show. We pre-recorded a show that's going to broadcast on release day, and we went all out, man. We rented just these sick lights, and we had our front of house guy that works with us on the road come out and record the show and mix it so it sounds really great. And there's behind the scenes footage from the making of the album interspersed between the songs. And I mean, it's sort of like, I feel like the best that we can do with the situation that we've been thrown into. And we're doing a live chat as well while the show airs, so that we can chat with fans and kind of hang out and try to have some sort of interaction.
Got it. Okay. I'm looking forward to that release show. Now, back to the main event, back to Van Halen and all that. It's really cool that Ain't Talking About Love was your first exposure and you had the Frankenstein guitar and all that. Have you always been specifically an Eddie guy, or did you also care about Dave and his solo career? And there's no wrong answer here.
No, I'm going to be completely honest. To be honest with you, like Van Halen to me was always about Eddie. And it was like to the point where I never picked a side with the Dave and Sammy thing, because I was always just listening to Eddie. Because I as a guitar player, he's such a virtuoso, such a legend. I was just blown away at what he did. You know, for me, it's like, obviously, especially as I started becoming more of a singer and a songwriter, Dave started working his way into my heart a lot more, because I used to just turn on Van Halen to listen to Eddie play, you know, which is, it just goes to speak on how lyrical those guitar parts were. You know, he was saying as much with the guitar as Dave was saying with his words and his, you know, and his crazy voice and all that. And that's what I love so much about Eddie, is he was pushing the guitar forward. And I think it took me a while to realize that the whole band was actually doing that. He was just kind of like the star in my eyes.
Does that mean that you're a fan of Yankee Rose by David Lee Roth? Because that is literally a guitar talking.
I love it. Yeah, totally. I mean, so this is my favorite Van Halen song early on was Ice Cream Man. You know, because it was like bluesy. Yeah, it was bluesy, and like for me, I think it's so cool that you know, that they kind of took something traditional and pushed it forward.
Yeah, and the last Van Halen album, A Different Kind of Truth, had Stay Frosty, which between you and me is really Ice Cream Man Part 2, right? I mean, totally. I don't think it's fighting that at all. It's almost like, how can we own the publishing for Ice Cream Man, but not actually call it Ice Cream Man? And they came up with that song. And if I'm not mistaken, isn't that Dave playing guitar in that song?
It could be. I really don't know. But it's funny, whenever my publicist wrote me and was like, "Are you a fan of David Lee Roth?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm a fan of David Lee Roth." And he's like, "Do you want to do this podcast?" And I was like, "Sure." And then I said, and then I wrote, "Sure, I can stay frosty."
That part didn't get forwarded to me.
I love that record. To me, that record just shows like that David Lee Roth's mind is still creating. I mean, the lyrics on that song, "As Is."
Oh yeah,
it's so cool to me. Like, what's the line? "Love 'em all," I says, "let Cupid sort 'em out." I love that.
And doesn't that also have the line, the quote that he always said, like, "I've been poor and I've been rich. Rich is better."
Rich is better, totally better.
Exactly. Yeah. Did you read Dave's autobiography way back when?
No, I haven't.
You don't know when you're reading it. It is the best book you've ever read or the most confusing book you've ever read. Supposedly it was a 700-page manuscript and all that. Now, I'm getting immediate vibes that you are so much funnier than people would know from just your music in itself. Was stand-up comedy influential to what you do?
No, not really. I mean, I love stand-up comedy. I'm just like, I'm an attention whore. You know what I mean? And so I basically, like, whatever could get attention was like what I was doing as a kid. And I love to make my friends laugh and tell jokes. And I think most of my friends are actually sick of that, because I tell the same jokes over and over. But I will say that that's one of the things that I find really intriguing about David Lee Roth is that he does incorporate humor into something that's often very serious. Like, especially like in the rock and roll world now, like if I see a poster of a band and you know, my band's guilty of this too, where like everyone's looking at the camera like it just killed their puppy dog in front of them. And it's like, oh wow, these guys are really tough. I wouldn't want to run into them behind a club or under a bridge where it's
or a shakedown, you know?
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's so funny, like how he incorporates that playful energy into his lyrics and all that. But and in interviews, like, dare I say, he's one of my favorite people to watch interview because he absolutely freaks people out.
Yeah.
You know?
I was thinking about this yesterday, and you might have a quick fire answer as a historian-y kind of artist. Was there an artist before Van Halen that was hard rock and funny, or at least smiley? Because Alice Cooper, off stage they were hilarious, but on stage it was all serious. Alice never broke character. Kiss, yeah, Paul Stanley's like happy, but it's just like, you are Kiss, we are you, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
He wasn't making jokes in the 70s or mid 80s.
I don't think anybody did it quite like they did it, you know, because this morning I was watching some of the footage of the Texas Jam.
Yeah.
You know, and they're on with they're all of these like I believe Ted Nugent was there. You know, I mean, it's like all of these bands that are not that, and then they come out and it's like David Lee Roth being David Lee Roth. I can only imagine witnessing that and going, yeah, I haven't seen anything quite like this before.
Right.
You know, kind of showing up with the hair and the makeup. And I mean, they really did start a movement, you know, not only in the way, in like the styling of rock and roll from that point on, but also in the styling of guitar, you know, with Eddie. That was like the thing. He was the dude, you know. I'm a huge Jeff Beck fan. Jeff Beck's my favorite guitarist, and I'm curious. I've never really read much about it, but I would be surprised if Eddie wasn't a big Jeff Beck fan. But I feel like he kind of I feel like he took some of like what Jeff had started doing and just ran with it, you know. And that's one of the things that I love about artists like that, is that they can take something sort of traditional that's there to begin with, and then they push the ball forward and they innovate further. And I feel like that's sort of what Van Halen did.
And you notably got to tour with GNR not too long ago. And of course, your band has indirect ties to Aerosmith. Were there any Van Halen interactions at any point?
No, I've never had any interactions with Van Halen. The closest interaction I've had to anything to do with Van Halen was we worked with Andy Johns, who, he, you know, I mean, he did some stuff later, like for Unlawful Carnal Knowledge and that sort of thing. I was still just like, this is really sick that we get to record with this engineer who got to work with Van Halen. And I had tons of questions about Eddie, and you know, he had us rent one of those big Dan Electro 6-string basses and a chorus pedal that they had used when they were making that record, and that was a cool experience. Nothing good came of it, but it was very cool. I guess the good thing that came of it was that we got to ask him questions.
Is there another guitar player besides Jeff Beck or Eddie Van Halen that comes even close for you?
You know, that's a tough one for me, because I'm kind of all over the map. I guess it just depends on what the sort of what the bar is. Like if we're going for like virtuoso status, I think Eddie's sort of the guy. Mm-hmm. You know, and to me, Jeff was sort of my bridge from my bluesy traditional music upbringing to more rock and roll, forward thinking guitar playing. And Eddie was sort of like the pinnacle of that. And Jeff as well, you know, I mean, those are two guys that I just think of as complete innovators. It's hard to say. I don't think anyone has really affected hard rock guitar like Eddie has, you know. I mean, there's obviously like Randy Rhoads and these legends, you know, and I would have loved to seen what Randy did if he could have stuck around a little longer, you know.
Yeah,
like, we're lucky that we had Eddie for so long.
Absolutely, with all that. And did any of that lead you down an Yngwie phase? That part I can't tell.
No, I never really got. I saw Yngwie once at a guitar show, and I can really appreciate it, but I never got into it.
Funny interaction.
For my taste.
Well, With Yngwie, it's the sort of thing that I find that people, when they're really early into guitar, they hear Eddie Van Halen, their minds are blown, and then they go, whoa, there's a guy who can do even more notes, and then they get into Yngwie, and eventually they outgrow it.
Well, no, I mean, like, Yngwie's a master of the instrument. Like, there's no question about it. You know, I was in a tough spot as a kid, and like when I first heard Yngwie, you got to realize, like, I'm studying B.B. King records. So you go from a guy that's playing 3 notes and saying a tremendous amount to then a guy that's playing all the notes, and my head was just exploding. It was basically like going to New York City for the first time after growing up in a town of 1,700 people. That's how it felt for me, like hearing Yngwie for the first time. My favorite things to listen to with Yngwie is when he's playing with like a full orchestra, you know, and you can really appreciate his understanding of classical music. But I feel like Eddie kind of had that flash and the skill, but was still very lyrical and still musical in a way that would relate to us on a soul level rather than just on a skill level. You know what I mean? I mean, that's how I sort of perceived it early on, at least. But I mean, even like, I didn't realize that You Got Me wasn't their song until like later on, you know. It was like, but just those simple riffs, don't. That was the first time I thought that was Eddie's riff, and he was just doing it and sort of bringing new life to it. But that was something that like was sort of teaching history to a kid like me when I was in elementary school, putting on an electric guitar, going, "What can I play?" No, no. You know, in my mind at that point when I heard Van Halen, I thought that whoever was playing guitar was also the singer. That's what I thought, you know. And then as I started watching more, you know, videos and stuff, then I realized, oh wow, there's this other really big personality in Van Halen as well.
Right. At this point in your career, people call you a guitar hero. Whether or not you want to embrace that, that's fine. You're a modest guy. But how much do you practice these days? How much do you warm up before you go on stage? That's what I'm curious about.
I just play guitar all the time, as a result of trying to stay creative, trying to write songs, trying to stay sane. You know, that the guitar has been my sort of window into my own world since I was a kid. So I always try to keep one close, you know, to where I can just reach over and pick it up. And it's not really with the mindset of, oh, I have to practice to improve. I think that kind of just comes by doing it for me. I have kids who've asked me, like, how did you learn to do that lick? And I say, oh, well, it's whenever you're watching TV or something and you're not thinking about it, just do it over and over, and don't think about playing it. Just let it become part of you and part of the thing. And I think guitar has just become something that I reach for, kind of like a glass of water or something like that, something that you need. But yeah, I love doing it. It makes me really happy. So I keep them close.
Did the COVID related pandemic and being home change how much you play guitar?
No, I you know, you would think that maybe it would, but I play guitar all the time, you know, whether I'm stuck at home or not. I think that, I'm very lucky to get to do this for a living, but it's, you know, it's one of those things, like I take a recording rig with me everywhere I go. So if we're flying to Europe to go on tour, then I'll pay the extra whatever to check my little road case with my recording rig and a guitar cable so that I can set up backstage at the show and put headphones on and go to my own little world. And I think the thing that COVID did was it forced me to figure out where to put my energy, and that went into our new record, because we're a live band. We play like 100 to 200 plus shows a year. So we're going, man, we're fish out of water. How are we going to get back in the water? And that was making this record.
Well, I mean, fish out of water in terms of also this is the longest break you've ever had. I'm sure that even when you were making records in the past, if you're focused on it, still there would be a, hey, can you play this one festival for a good amount of money? Yeah, sure. Let's take a break. Let's go ahead and do that. So it's now been, did you come off the road in February or March?
We came off the road we played our last show December 28th with Clutch in Asheville, North Carolina.
So even longer than that. So no gigs in 2020 at all.
Yeah.
Wow.
So we have played no real shows in 2020.
Jeez. Well, I'm hoping for a 2021 to be full of gigs from your band and all that because you got this great record. Fingers crossed. You and I have no control over that except just telling people to wear masks and all that. But 2 quick questions.
Yeah, I know. And
2 quick questions, then you're a free man for me. Is that okay, Tyler?
Yeah, of course, man.
Okay. So, yes, you're a guitar guy. Yes, we established you liked comedy. But away from all that, the television area, what's a TV show recommendation or two that you could pass along that people should be getting up on?
Ooh. Ozark. I think Ozark's a great show. That's one that's one that I wished I hadn't finished so fast.
That's the word. Jason Bateman finally acting and showing his dramatic colors and all that.
I know. What about you? Are there any shows that you've been digging on?
For sure. There was a Comedy Central show called Detroiters that got canceled 2-3 years ago. Ever heard of it?
Mm-mm.
Hilarious show with some SNL-related people about them kind of being forced to move back to Detroit and start up this ad agency. It's a really funny show. And Brockmire, ever heard of that one?
Mm-mm. Check it out.
Hank Azaria from The Simpsons playing this kind of disgraced baseball announcer. It's almost like Eastbound and Down, but about a baseball announcer. I mean,
Cool.
Golden age of television, am I right?
Yeah. That's awesome, man.
Cool. I've learned Ozark. I've learned that the new record is going to have a live release show that you're going to be tweeting or doing the social media-ing during it. Nothing's stopping for Tyler Bryant at the Shakedown. That's what I've learned. So I'm going to ask you the closer, and that's any last words for the kids?
I just want to apologize to everyone because I just remembered that I initially was not going to answer any questions for this podcast using my own voice. I had planned to just use this Diamond Dave soundboard. God damn it, baby, no, I ain't lying to you. I'm only going to tell you one time.
Yeah.
I mean, that's my last word for the kids. This is I can't believe we haven't talked about this because this is my favorite app in the world. This is something that I use so much. Like if I find myself in a very serious situation where I'm supposed to be being very quiet, then I myself will remain very quiet, and then I will just it's the best.
Does anyone else in the Shakedown have that on their phones and they do that as well?
No, I'm the only person because I think that at this point they're like probably so annoyed with it. Because I used to prank call people using that. And now everybody knows it's me, you know, but I tried like the Dr. Phil app and like I found all these funny ones, but that's the best one. Like my wife is in a band as well. And the other day, you know, they were working on a video to post on YouTube or something. And
mm-hmm.
I waited till they finished. And then like at the very end, it was just, and everyone loses it. It's so funny.
I mean, there's the great, oh God, I'm running.
Yeah.
I think that begs the question, are there other Van Halen songs that you can create a full soundboard off of besides Running with the Devil?
I think that someone should offer a prize to whoever can top this one. But I'm sure there are. I'm sure there are.
Would be Just Like Paradise. If you listen with the That's It, and the 1-800-SEE-A-BABY and the whole Skyscraper album, he talks more in between choruses than I think most people do during a day.
Yeah, man, that would be great. I would love another one.
Exactly. Well, I take back everything I've said. That is the best thing that I've learned about you from this interview, that soundboard is ready and willing at all times. So Tyler,
yeah, it's on the first page, man.
That's devotion, man. Well, thank you so much for your time, and just keep up the greatness, and hope to see you live in New York when this all blows over.
All right, man. Cheers. Thanks for supporting rock and roll.